Hi, everybody. Welcome to Cool Hoops March Madness edition. Today, I'm joined by Mr. Yumshakian and Coach Eve Paven. Today, we're going to discuss the bracket, what to expect in the upcoming weekend and weeks ahead. The field is 68 teams, as always. This year, 31 automatic qualifiers as the Ivy League sat out, but still 68 teams in the field. First four games are Thursday, then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, or round of 64 and 32. And hopefully we'll have a good, competitive, safe tournament this year in the bubble in Indiana. Guys, first thing I want to ask, after looking at the bracket, and Mr. Y, you can start, what stands out to you the most? Like, what's something that pops out at you?
So number one, Oklahoma State. I got to say, I was a little bit shocked when I saw that they received the 4 seed. I thought the Big 12 was very strong this year, and they had a lot of quality wins. So Oklahoma State getting the 4 and being set into Illinois' region, I think, was a little bit unfair to them. There were other teams, for example, like Florida State or Houston, that I personally, on my own bracketology, had below Oklahoma State. So that's one major one that stood out to me right off the bat.
Coach Eve?
Well, when the brackets came out, not really a surprise, but the first thing that kind of stuck out was no Duke, no Kentucky. And, as a Duke fan, a little bit disappointed. I don't think they deserve to make it, but the way they didn't make it, obviously getting COVID. And, I think if they would have beaten Florida State that upcoming game, that would have been a big win and maybe boosted their resume a little bit. So that was the first thing that kind of stuck out. No Duke, no Kentucky for the first time in a very long time. And the other thing that, stuck out to me, I think looking at that, the Michigan bracket with Michigan, Alabama, Texas, and Florida State, I think that bracket is wide open, especially with Michigan missing their best player, Livers. So, I think that bracket could go anyway.
Yeah, a few things that stuck out to me. First of all, I saw, yes, Gonzaga, obviously 26-0 regular season, 1 seed, obviously going to be the top seed. But I just noticed how easy their side is. I mean, outside of Iowa, there is not much competition there. Kansas, the 3 seed, and Virginia, the 4 seed, both had to leave their conference tournament with COVID issues, been quarantined all week. Never know what's going to happen there. And then Iowa, a team they already played and scored 99 points against. I just think that Gonzaga has deservingly, a very easy path. And another thing I noticed is the respect for the Big Ten Conference. 9 teams got in. Only 1 team has to play in a play-in game. And out of the top 8 teams that are in the tournament, 4 of them are out of the Big Ten. So clearly the committee values how competitive that conference was, even though they had some losses mixed in there. And seeds that are higher, Rutgers, Maryland, Wisconsin, they all have favorable matchups. I mean, Rutgers is favored in the game. Maryland can very well compete with UConn, so I just think the Big Ten got a good draw from the committee in general.
Yeah, I mean, well, the metrics said the Big Ten is probably the best conference that basketball has seen in the last 20 years. So deservedly so. I think they got their 9 teams in. And if you recall earlier in the year, even Minnesota and Northwestern, they were flirting getting in. They were top 25 teams at one point. So the conference top to bottom was just a really, really strong conference. And rightfully so. They were rewarded when the field was announced.
And I was gonna say I also agree with you with the Gonzaga bracket. The only little hiccup I maybe see is Virginia. But I agree. That's a pretty favorable bracket for them for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, Virginia with the COVID positive tests right now, also it's a question mark if they'll even be able to play with a full strength roster. We'll see how it all plays out. But you know what? Gonzaga earned it. 26-0. They got 4 big wins early in the year, so they proved, not only can they go undefeated in a weak conference, but they can beat the best of the best. And they did that all year long.
Yeah. Mr. Y, what do you think of Rutgers' draw? I mean, you originally mentioned that it's pretty favorable, but if you want to break it down a little bit more, what you think their chances to make a run?
Absolutely. So when I was looking at the teams before the field was announced, I had Rutgers pegged somewhere in the 8-9 matchup, which meant a second round game against Gonzaga or Baylor, potentially. Had they won that game, I was ecstatic as a Rutgers fan to get Clemson. Clemson's a team that was playing really well in the beginning of the year. They had a COVID pause. They came back. They got blown out a bunch of times. They just haven't been the same team in the second half of the year. And I think it's a really favorable draw. And I mean, Vegas agrees. They are the favorites. They're the only lower seeded team that's actually favored in the first round. And I really like their chances. Moving forward from there, they would potentially play Houston in the second round. Houston, to me, is the weakest of the two seeded teams. They've got one win over a field of 68 team. They have a win over Texas Tech from earlier in the year. The only other NCAA tournament team they played was Wichita State, and they lost that game. So they've got 2 quadrant 1 wins coming into this thing. They're not really tested. They came through a weak conference, and I think that Rutgers potentially has a chance there to get to the Sweet 16. Absolutely. So I'm very happy as a Rutgers fan with the draw. But they're an inconsistent basketball team, so we got to see what happens when they actually hit the court on Friday night.
Yeah.
And Jeff, if I could just add piggyback a little bit with what Mr. Wise said. Sometimes it's better to get the number 10 seed than the 8-9. You know, you might have a slightly tougher matchup in the first round, which, you know, really isn't the case this time with Rutgers, because I think Clemson is a good draw. And at the same time, you avoid the 1 seed in the second round. So I think, you know, it worked out beautifully for Rutgers. They couldn't have a better draw.
It's definitely a win-win. I mean, you look at the metrics. You got, you know, the Ken Pom, the BART ratings, the net rankings. Rutgers is ahead of Clemson in every single one of those computer rankings. And Clemson also is under all of those 8 and 9 seeds. Clemson receiving a 7 seed, it's a miracle for Rutgers.
Yeah, I thought Clemson was overrated in that spot.
Yeah, big time.
I was expecting them to be an 8 or a 9, if that. I mean, they lost in the ACC tournament to Miami.
Right.
I see that Mr. Wise, analytics guy.
Coach Eve, speaking of the ACC now, they had a down year. I mean, Duke was really 500 most of the year. Their top seeded team is Virginia at the 4. What team do you think out of the ACC has the best chance to make a run in this thing?
I got 2 teams, but if you want one, I'm going to give you Florida State, going back to that bracket with Michigan, Alabama, and Texas. You know, I think they're all pretty evenly matched. I know Alabama has been, you know, pretty hot as of late. But, you know, they played a couple close games in the conference tournament, and I think they could get beat. Texas also, same thing. They've been hot in their conference tournament. But, you know, I think Florida State can play with those guys. The other matchup that I was going to bring up really quickly was, you know, I hate to say it, but North Carolina. I know Baylor, and I'm kind of looking ahead a little bit into the next round if North Carolina gets there, but Baylor's got a lot of really good guards, which obviously comes handy, you know, when it comes to the tournament, but Baylor doesn't have a lot of size. And, you know, if North Carolina can kind of crush them on the glass, I think North Carolina has a decent chance to pull the upset in the second round as well.
I was thinking about that North Carolina upset too. I mean, I don't know how good Baylor really is. I mean, 2 losses, but I haven't seen a lot of Baylor, but I don't have them in the Final Four. I don't know how far they can get, but I do think North Carolina poses a threat to them, yeah. Mr. Y, give me a double-digit seed or a mid-major conference winner that you think is going to win a game or 2.
All right, so we got to go outside of Rutgers here. I'm looking at Ohio. Ohio's a good team. Yeah, it's a good 3-point. It's a good 3-point shooting team. They're playing a team that's coming off of COVID. So Ohio definitely. Another one that I like, potentially making a run. Oregon State. I can see them winning their first round matchup as the 12 over Tennessee. I know they'll have a tough game against Oklahoma State, which I already touted as a really good team earlier in this program. But Oregon State they've shown the ability to be able to play with anybody, and I definitely believe that they've got a shot to win a couple games here in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I have written down here Ohio. The kid Jason Preston, his mom died. He only had 50-something points in his high school career, and he really turned it around. He puts the team on his back. They only lost by 2 at Illinois. I mean, it was early in the season, but Illinois is a 1 seed. they could play with anybody. And Virginia's coming off COVID issues. You never know what's going to happen with that. And my other team that I think could make a run is Michigan State. I mean, they're playing hot as of late. Illinois, they beat Ohio State. I watched that game, and they even beat Michigan. So they've won 5 of their last 8. They're getting hot at the right time. If they can win that play-in game, I don't see any reason why they can't beat BYU.
Yeah, they've definitely got a good draw, and just like Rutgers, Michigan State has played the best of the best, and some of these other teams have not. So the Big Ten teams, especially the mid to low tier Big Ten teams in a tournament, definitely are prepared to play the best competition over the next couple of weeks.
Coach Eve, you got a double-digit seed or conference winner you think should make it run?
Yeah, this was probably the hardest one for me. I'm going to go with Winthrop. I know they got Villanova in the first round, but I know Villanova is missing Gillespie.
Yeah.
I think they say Connor Gillespie. I think he's out. And then, if they could win that game, I think they got Purdue, who I'm not a huge fan of either. So, I think I saw Winthrop play a few games. They kind of get up and down the court, score a ton of points. And, I think they can play with Villanova and Purdue, which will be their first 2 games.
Yeah, the thing with Purdue is they are a very, very young team, but they're a very talented team. So, I mean, it is a question mark, how they perform in the big spotlight in the NCAA tournament. They do have potential. I definitely have looked at Winthrop over Villanova. I don't know particularly if they can get through Purdue, but, if the freshman inexperience piles up on them, it can definitely happen for sure.
And I like the Michigan State pick, Jeffrey. Tom Lezzo, led team can.
Yeah. I think his coaching is going to carry, and even maybe if they even carry some momentum from that play-in game and against BYU. I mean, BYU's best win this year was, I think it was San Diego State, and I mean they're a solid team, but not a Power 5 conference.
Yeah,
it feels like Tom is going to get some 2 wins by himself every year. And then if he has a good team, that's when they really make a run.
Yeah, I think honestly they could even give Texas a problem.
One thing that really stands out to me here, when you're missing Duke, you're missing Kentucky, there's no Calipari, there's no Krzyzewski. You've got Tom Izzo, you've got Jim Boeheim in Syracuse, you've got Rick Pitino with Iona. These are teams that are double-digit seeds that have excellent coaches, and it's going to be really interesting to watch those teams, especially Iona. I'm very, very curious to watch their game against Alabama and see how they perform.
And these coaches now had 4 or 5 days to prepare, before their first round game. So it's not like, once a tournament gets started, you only maybe have a day or 2. These coaches had 4 or 5 days leading up to their first game.
Yeah. It's going to be very, very fun to watch for sure.
An overrated team that I think honestly got in as a higher seed than I thought was West Virginia. I mean, I think honestly Rutgers, if they were to beat Houston, would give even West Virginia or anybody that comes out of those teams up there a run.
Music to my ears.
West Virginia, I don't think they're that good. They're 5-7 against top 25 teams. Their best win's Kansas. I honestly think San Diego State's going to knock them off in the second round.
Very possible.
You guys got any groups?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I agree with you on that with West Virginia. As a Rutgers fan, I looked at what I think the best case scenario could be, and I think the Elite 8 is the absolute cap for them. I think running into Illinois or Oklahoma State would be the end of their year in the Elite 8. But I think, like you mentioned, if you look at the regions around the bracket, those 8 teams in the bottom right corner of the bracket, that's wide open. Those teams, there's no team, and I know that Houston's high. I know that a lot of people are very high on Houston. I just don't buy them. I don't buy them. They have not played any competition, and I'm very, very curious to see how this all plays out.
That's kind of how I feel with BYU or Utah State. When I looked to go through, I was like, BYU, I mean, I don't see them winning. And Utah State, I mean, Texas Tech is good. They were in the championship the last time. And I was like, I don't know, 11-6 early in the day on the first day. Normally some kind of crazy upset goes on. But I don't buy those smaller conferences to come out as an underdog to really beat up on some of these guys.
Yep.
Coach, you got anybody that's overrated?
Yeah, one team that I thought was overrated coming into the season, Iowa. And I think they had a pretty good year for the most part. But I think with them, offensively, obviously really, really good. Everybody talks about Garza, probably the player of the year. But I think if a team gets hot on them, if they don't play defense, like they really don't, and I don't think it's that they don't try. I just don't think they're very, very good defensively. And I think they could get upset pretty early in the tournament. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
If you said that a month and a half ago, I would totally agree. But watching Iowa the last month, they have actually stepped it up on the defensive end as well. They've got 3-point shooters out the wazoo. Like, we talk about how does a mid-major upset one of those blue bloods? It's with 3-point shooting. So Iowa's got the player of the year, Luka Garza, and they've got the 3-point shooting. It's going to be tough for anyone to keep up with the amount of scoring that they do. And running into Gonzaga is probably going to be the end of them right there, but I can't see them getting knocked off before that round.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
You got anybody underrated?
Yeah, I got 2 teams. One which obviously I know you guys don't like already, but one of them was Houston. And I know a 2 seed a lot of times can be underrated, but I don't hear a lot of people talking about them. And I know they don't have a lot of good wins, which is a good point, but they only have 3 losses. So if they didn't have a lot of wins and they had 6, 7, 8 losses, then I would agree with you guys. But they beat everybody they've played for the most part. And I think they're gonna make a run, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I got them in the Final Four.
Yeah, I mean,
listen, Houston. You go ahead, Jeff.
I think Houston. I mean, I watched them. They played Ohio State in the last tournament in the round of 32, and I mean they were tough. I mean, yeah, it's 2 years ago, but their coach is good. I mean, they come out of a smaller conference, but do I expect them to falter early? Not really. I'm just saying that there's a chance. I mean, I don't personally think Rutgers is going to beat them, but I mean, there's a chance. Big Ten team. Rutgers has played against big competition all season long, but I could see Houston easily getting to the Sweet 16 early date.
And I got one more just to keep an eye on. I got Texas Tech. I know it could be painful watching them offensively sometimes, and if McClung doesn't, drop 20 points for them, they might be in trouble. But defense travels, and I really like their part of the bracket. They're a 6 seed, so I think the 3 seed in the next round, just figuring out both teams make it. I think they could beat Arkansas. Not a huge Razorback guy. And Jeff, I think Texas Tech will give your Ohio State a handful as well.
It's
so
possible.
I think running into Baylor might be the end of them, but I like Texas Tech.
Yeah. An underrated team that I got is LSU. I mean, they play competitive SEC. They made a good run at the SEC tournament. They only lost to Alabama by 1. And I personally think that with Michigan, I mean, it might be some Ohio State bias here, but with Michigan missing out with Liver, I mean, I think that LSU can really give them a run for their money. Do I think they'll beat them? Probably not. But I think that LSU is going to cause a bit of a problem for Michigan in round 2. But they got to get through the Bonnies first, who always put up a good fight in the tournament.
Yeah. LSU, definitely. I mean, when I did my bracketology, I had LSU pinned as a 5 seed. I was shocked when they came in at the 8. And another one that I'm looking at, Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is a team that had a good season. They got shut down at the end because of COVID, and they just fell down the seeds 4 or 5 spots just because they didn't play games. I've got Virginia Tech knocking off Florida right away. I think they're a much better team than the 10 seed that's been given to them, and I see them advancing. I don't know that they can take on Ohio State, but I certainly feel that that'll be the next game for Virginia Tech. And then just going back to Houston one more time, I want to talk about them. You mentioned that they've got 3 losses, right? They've played 17 or 18 Quadrant 3 and Quadrant 4 teams. They have played nobody. Rutgers is tested. I am looking at a major upset here. I'm going on camera. I'm saying it. Rutgers going to the Sweet 16.
Only time will tell.
It's going to be exciting.
Can you tell how excited I am as a Rutgers fan? First NCAA tournament that I've ever seen with them in it. It's a long time coming. I can't wait.
I mean, they got a good draw. I mean, I'd be personally – I mean, we mentioned it earlier, But Rutgers with the 10 seed playing Clemson and then possibly Houston, who's been untested. I mean, Houston's a good team. Don't get me wrong, but I'd rather play Houston than play one of the top seeds.
Yeah,
Illinois,
right.
Gonzaga, Baylor.
I had them pegged against Gonzaga and Baylor. So getting Houston is Christmas.
Yeah,
It is Christmas.
And then lastly, we'll kind of wrap it up here with the last obvious question. Final four. I'll start. I like Gonzaga to take the whole thing. I think they're going to play Illinois in the title game. That's my other team. I mean, Coburn and DeSumo, I think, will carry them all the way through their bracket. I think, again, we mentioned how weak and how wide open that bottom half of that bracket is. I mean, Houston, we were talking about them bashing them the whole show, except for Coach Eve, about how they haven't played anybody and how they could possibly get upset early. I don't see anybody giving Illinois any problems. And then on the other side, on the bottom left, Alabama playing great basketball. I like Quinterly. He transferred there from Villanova. He went to Hudson Catholic. I watched his brother play for Ramsey last year in person. I was there with Coach Eve at that game. And the last team might be a little biased here. I think Ohio State's going to get there. Don't think they're going to be able to beat Illinois.
What a shock!
But I think Ohio State, if they have to get Kyle Young back though. I know he got that concussion in the Big Ten tournament, and I originally didn't think that Ohio State was going to be able to play this good, but I watched them last week in the Big Ten tournament. I was impressed with their play. They were able to knock off Michigan, and they took Illinois all the way to overtime down to the money. And nobody really expected them as the 5 seed in the Big Ten tournament to make a run all the way there. But I think that they can have another run in them with the look that they got.
Yeah, they certainly did impress. Do you have? So you got your Final Four. Who's gonna play in the championship game?
Gonzaga's playing Illinois, and I got Gonzaga winning.
Okay, so I agree with you on the championship game opponents. I also have Gonzaga playing Illinois. I've got Illinois winning that. And my Final Four is Gonzaga, Alabama, Baylor, Illinois.
Yeah, I know doing all these brackets, a lot of times we like to see, the Cinderella story make it to the Final Four. But at the end of the day, a lot of times, like Mr. Wise said, it's the 1, 2, 3 seeds for the most part making it. I got Gonzaga winning it all. I think it's their year. And, coming into the year, when I watched the first couple games, I thought that they were a lot better. Like, I thought it was Gonzaga and then, everybody else. And, after the whole season played out, I still kind of feel that way, okay, especially with, Baylor kind of falling off a little bit at the end, Michigan losing livers. I know Illinois has been hot, but I still think it's Gonzaga and everybody else. So I'm going to go with Gonzaga winning it all. And I'm gonna go with Baylor to make it as well. I got Gonzaga and Baylor meeting in the championship game, and then I got Houston. And the toughest one was to pick was from the East. I'm gonna go with Alabama. So I got Alabama, Houston, Baylor, and the Zags.
Nobody's buying Michigan.
I just don't like Michigan, and I might be a little biased, but I hope they don't make it.
I don't like Michigan either, but I mean, Livers being there without Livers being 100%, even if he is able to play in the tournament, I mean, that really hurts them not having him.
Not a huge Alabama guy either, but I don't know if Texas and Florida State are good enough.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Alabama, but you never know.
I have looked at that region over and over again. Michigan, Texas, Alabama. It could be any of them.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, the odds are that the Big 10 or the Big 12 team will prevail. I'm just taking a shot here with Alabama, just because it's very hard for teams from the same conference to make it to the Final Four or whatnot. So I'm trying to mix it up and bring in someone else in there as well.
Yeah. All right, that wraps up the show today. Cool Hoops March Madness edition. I wish you guys all luck with your brackets.
Thank you, Jeff.